What's up everyone? Today is my March wrap up. I feel like I say this every single month, but I am doing such a good job with my Reading to Zero challenge. If you're new to my channel and you don't know about this Reading to Zero challenge, I gave myself a challenge last August in order for me to read all of the books that I currently own. So I felt very overwhelmed. I had like 160 books and I never knew what to read. And then I was still getting books from the library. I was still buying books and I just needed some way to make myself read the books. What I've been doing since then is reading only books that I currently own. There have been a few hauls that I've done, but it hasn't been like me really going out and buying books. I might have just gotten them for like gifts or something. I actually have a whole spread set up in my reading journal, which I show you how to set this up. I'll link the video up here. I have 2 pages worth and I've been keeping track. These are all the books that I currently own and I have been putting the star rating when I actually read them. Or as you can see, I did have, I have 2 DNFs this year. So 2 of them have DNFs on them. And then I do occasionally unhaul if I just definitely know that books aren't going to be like my reading taste anymore. So I currently do have 2 unhauls on this list. And they're actually books that I decided to unhaul in March. So I decided to unhaul The How and the Why because I've just realized multiple times that I am not a young adult reader. I feel like I'm just way too old for that age bracket. And so I have no interest in reading this anymore. And then the other book that I'm going to be unhauling this month is Lizzys Story by Stephen King. You guys probably know that I'm not a huge Stephen King lover. I have a really hard time with all of the description. I have a hard time with the books being really big. And I recently saw Gwen, who's another booktuber here on YouTube. She read this, I think like last month or 2 months ago. And she was just saying how like it was not that great of a book. It was really hard to understand. So from her review is like my main reason as to why I'm unhauling this, because if she couldn't appreciate it, I definitely won't be able to appreciate it. Now, I also did add 2 books to my Reading to Zero challenge this month. I actually won these books because I have a book club on Facebook and we did a team challenge in February. And my team won, which was amazing. And so we got gifted books off of our wish list. So I got gifted Just Married by Kirsten Modglin, which I am so extremely excited about because I love Kirsten Modglin. My washing machine has like a whole song. Okay, cool. All right, we're done now. Okay, then the other book that I have is Survivor. This one is another one that I got gifted this month. I actually heard about this from McKay and Haley. I'll link both of their channels down below because they both talked about this book and I'm super excited to read this one. Well, I'm actually excited for both is what I mean. Okay, so I updated my Goodreads stats and as you can see, look at this, guys. I am over halfway. I cannot believe that. I can't believe that I have already hit half of my goal and it's only the beginning of April. Then I did not do good at my reading at night spread. I only read a few nights. I ended up like getting COVID this month and I just did not feel like reading during that time at all, but I'm gonna try and do a better job in April. I filled out my Patreon buddy reads. We'll be reading the Chevy Stevens Dark Roads book and these were our previous reads. All right, let's go into the actual stats now for this month. So in March, I read 10 books. I read 3,133 pages. 2 of these books were physical, 5 of them were audio, and then 3 are a combo, which means that I listened to the audiobook, but I was also physically reading along. I read 9 young adult books and 1 young adult book. And for my star ratings, unfortunately, I didn't have any 5 stars, but I had 4 4 stars, 4 3 stars, 2 2 stars, and 0 1 stars. And I did have 1 DNF. And then I read 7 thrillers, 2 nonfiction, and 1 romance. And I keep track of this via this spread right here. Okay, and then if I actually go to my spreads, so this is my March spread. I have my reading calendar here, which I keep track on what days I read certain books. I have my Reading to Zero stats down here, and then these are the books that I've read, which I forgot to print off this cover. And then I did set up, this is for April, so So this is my April TBR. I have my reading to zero starting number here, and then I'll be keeping track of my reading calendar. So like I've been doing this year, I've been starting with the lowest rated first, and then I move to the highest rated. We're gonna start out, actually, I had one DNF this month. Tried reading Brother by Anya Alborn, and unfortunately I got 83 pages in and I just did not care at all about this book. I found it almost like a Stephen King book where there was a lot of description, not a lot of plot. It was very character driven, and at 83 pages, I couldn't even tell you anything that was really going on. I just found it very boring for me, which is unfortunate because I actually had a lot of people recommend this to me, and even my sister like loved it and couldn't wait for me to read it. So I feel really bad, but it's not worth me wasting my time on it. Now to my 2 stars. I read for the Backlist Readathon, You Have the Right to Remain Fat. This is a just really tiny book, and I just think that I probably shouldn't have picked this up. I wasn't really the demographic of, you know, who should be reading this book, because even though I am overweight and I might deal with body dysmorphia and eating disorders and stuff like that, I just didn't relate to it the way that the author related to it. I found this to be a very strong feminist book that really disliked diet culture and men, and I don't necessarily have problems with either of those things. So I just didn't love this. If you're looking for more of a memoir about, you know, body image and things like that, I would recommend Hunger by Roxane Gay, because I felt like I could relate to that book way more than I could this one. My other 2-star I actually gave to my sister because I think that she would like it. But it was Survive the Night by Riley Sager. Finally read this. I'd been putting it off for so long just because I haven't liked the last like 3 Riley Sager books, and this just made me realize that I just don't think he is an author for me anymore. I loved his first 2 books, and after that I have been disappointed with all of the rest of the ones that he's written. A lot of people thought that I didn't like this book because of it having like 80s references and stuff, but I actually didn't really mind that. It was the fact that this book almost seemed like it was trying to be a no exit book, and the movies in her head, that was the weirdest thing ever. I just felt like this book kind of talked about the same thing over and over again, and you couldn't ever trust our narrator slash main character because of this weird thing that was in the book about how she would like hallucinate and think that everything was like a movie in her head. She was like obsessed with like 80s movies. I just felt like that was really, really stupid. I felt like the ending was really stupid, and so I just did not like it. Okay, next up we're gonna move to our 3 stars. I read Hidden Wives by Claire Avery. This is a young adult polygamy book. It's just a fiction book. It is not a true story, but last month I actually read one called Keep Sweet, which I absolutely loved. These both were pretty similar, but this one was a lot longer than Keep Sweet, and I just felt like it was very repetitive over and over again. I think Keep Sweet was done really well, even though it was a young adult book. So if I were you, I would definitely pick up Keep Sweet and just not read this one, because I was definitely more bored with this one. The main premise of this is about 2 sisters who are teens, and they grew up in a polygamous cult, and so they're being married very young. It's actually the same premise as Keep Sweet. So, like I said, it's not like you can really do anything more original with that. I think I've read enough young adult polygamy books now. My next 3-star was That Night by Chevy Stevens. I actually just had picked this up right at the end of the month because I needed another audiobook to listen to, and I did listen to this in 2 days. I thought it was an okay read in order for me to be at work and need something to be, you know, entertained by when I'm, you know, cleaning and prepping. I mean, it was a decent audiobook, but if I actually thought about it, it was only really a 3-star because it's not like it was anything super thrilling or amazing. This actually reminded me of Orange is the New Black mixed with Pretty Little Liars, because half of it actually felt like a young adult book. It was about this one main character who also has a younger sister, and then this group of girls who kind of bullied her and eventually her younger sister. But the main character is kind of like a rebel in her teen years, so she gets in trouble and no one really believes her, whereas her little sister is kind of like a goody two-shoes, even though she's also doing things that are naughty. But of course no one believes her because, you know, she's a goody two-shoes. Definitely could relate to that because I was the bad child and my older sister was always the goody two-shoes and got away with everything. But unfortunately she gets framed framed for the murder of her younger sister, and she ends up going to prison for like 17 years of her life. And so we're reading between her and her prison days, and then also flashbacks to find out what happened, who actually murdered her sister, what's going on, can she clear her name. I actually felt like the idea of the book was really good. It just wasn't put together very well. I feel like it could have been more thrilling. There was only one little thing that I was surprised by, but you kind of already know who the killer is, you know who the bad people are, and nothing else is really shocking in it. All right, my next 3-star that I have to talk about is The Secrets of Us by Lucinda Berry. I actually read 2 Lucinda Berry books this month, and the next one will be up in the 4 stars. Again, I didn't find this book super thrilling or anything that I'm going to remember in the future. It was just kind of one of those, you know, just normal thrillers. Nothing that I dislike necessarily, but just when you get to the end, you're kind of like, you know, that was it. That was nothing to write home about. This book was about foster sisters. They grew up in not a super great household where their foster parent actually also had a real daughter. And so of course the real daughter got away with everything, was the bully. It actually kind of reminds me of That Night very much so. But something really bad happens when they're younger, and this haunts them in their adult life. Like I said, it's not something that I would necessarily recommend. I don't think that anyone would be like absolutely in love with this book, but I also didn't like hate it. The last 3-star I'm gonna talk about is The Last Thing He Told Me. I actually changed my rating for this. I have a spoiler vlog about this because this was my Patreon buddy read for this month, and every month I do a spoiler vlog for the buddy read for Patreon. So I'll link that up above if you're interested in like watching me read through this book. But I originally rated it, I was gonna rate it like 3.5 or 4 stars. But now that I've kind of waited the whole month and I sat down to actually rate it, it's not like I can really explain what happened in this book, and I really dislike the ending. So I'm actually gonna settle at a 3-star. And I was actually reading through this book, I thought it was very, very thrilling, and I really liked how different and original it was. Storyline, having the FBI come look at this guy because supposedly he kind of was like embezzling money or stocks in this company. So that really had me intrigued, but once I got to the end, I still didn't understand. Like, I felt like there were so many questions that needed to be answered, and it kind of felt like a mother-daughter relationship book more so than trying to actually figure out if the husband was good or bad. Does that make sense? I still don't know if the husband was good or bad, and I still don't really understand that part of the story, if that makes sense. So because of that, I'm rating a 3-star instead of a 4-star, but I'm actually really excited because tomorrow I have the book discussion for this. Me and my patrons are getting on a Zoom and we're going to discuss this book. So maybe I'll understand it more after the discussion. Okay, now on to my 4 stars, which is really funny because I read all of them during the Backlist Readathon. So I am the host of the Backlist Readathon. I had Sid and Liv be my co-host this month, and it was super fun, even though it was during the time I had COVID. So I think I'm gonna start with talking about Goodnight Beautiful by Amy Molly. This was a pretty decent thriller with some really good twists that I didn't see coming. But the second half of it is super similar to Misery by Stephen King. It references Misery by Stephen King. So if you've already read that, you're probably already gonna know what happens in this book, which unfortunately, that's why I couldn't rate it 5 stars, because I felt like, yes, there were shocking parts in it, which is why I gave it that higher rating, but I don't like that she kind of just ripped off of Misery by Stephen King. Next is my second read of Lucinda Berry this month. This one is When She Returned, and this is actually a cult thriller, and I fairly enjoyed it. Most of it I really loved because of the ending. So this is about this family, and the wife actually becomes interested in this cult, but of course she doesn't know it's a cult at the moment, but she does become like a member and disappears. After years go by, her husband and her child, like, they're like, okay, she's definitely dead. They pronounce her dead. The husband gets remarried, and then all of a sudden later she comes out of nowhere and is back in their lives along with a baby. And so you see like different flashbacks of before she became part of the cult, while she was part of the cult, and then of course present day, where they're trying to find out like where was she this whole time? What was she doing? You know, whose baby is this? And so I really enjoyed this specifically for the way that it ends. I think that it was done super well. Okay, then I had a nonfiction that I really liked this month. This is The Less People Know About Us. This is about stolen identities back in the 1980s. And so this family had their identity stolen multiple times and had to live in like a paranoia of, you know, their identity always being stolen. And it really rubbed off on the young daughter because later on she finds that her identity was stolen back when she was 11. And so here she is like in college trying to, you know, get a car and do stuff, and she can't because no one really believes about stolen identities back in the 1980s because the internet wasn't really big and people didn't really know this was happening, so there was nothing to really do to fix it. But it is pretty shocking to figure out who was the one that was stealing the identities, but be careful because I actually got spoiled for that before I even got to that point in the book. Over on Goodreads, a lot of people say who it is and they don't have it marked as a spoiler, which I feel like definitely could take away from the book. But even though I was spoiled, I still enjoyed the story and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Last but not least is my new favorite author. I couldn't give it 5 stars though because her books are just a little too long. Like they could definitely be amazing if they were like 100 pages shorter. But Sing You Home by Jodi Picoult, which I've been saying her name wrong so much, but Pico, that is what it is. I rated this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It had a lot of IVF and infertility rep, which I thought was amazing. It was super emotional. I was like crying 20 pages in. This also has LGBT rep because even though it starts with a husband and wife and their struggles with infertility, they end up getting divorced, which this happens in the beginning. Then later, the wife does get remarried to a female. So we have a female-female romance, and they end up wanting to have kids in the future. So they want to use the 3 frozen embryos that she has from her previous marriage. But the ex-husband is not okay with that. So obviously they then have to go to court and they have to try and fight this. And that's where it becomes just like super interesting. I never thought I would say that I love courtroom scenes, but Jodi just writes hers so well that I become obsessed with these like moral dilemmas. And there for a second, the ending I thought was going to end in this really like crazy way, and I was like really upset about it, but I highly recommend picking this one up. I forgot to tell you guys my exact reading to zero stats. So I started the month with 58 books. I read 10 of them. I hauled 2. I unhauled 3 because one of them was the DNF. And so I have a total of 47 books left on my reading to zero shelf to read. So I definitely should get that done in the next few months. I'm really excited because I'm probably going to do a big birthday haul in May since my birthday is in May, and I just think that I deserve to get some books. But even though I'm going to buy some books and do a video on that, I'm still going to save them until after I'm done with the reading to zero challenge because I am determined to read the ones that I currently own before I go get newer, sparkly, nicer books. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you again for watching. It means a lot to me, and I will see you all in another video soon. Bye everyone.
This is as good a day as any to start the rebuilding of life. The roads that lay open